but they store exceptionally well. I have had some under the barn that have stored for 2 years before, and they were still tasty. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all y'all are having an awesome day. It is Thursday, May 22nd here in South Georgia. And on our last video, we talked about how the intense summer heat can affect certain plants in our backyard garden. This video, we're going to switch it up a little bit and talk about plants you can put in your backyard garden that thrive in that intense summer heat. So I'm going to give you a list of 10 things that thrive in the summer heat, especially in a really hot and humid climate like we are in down here in South Georgia. And I think this is something really important to start thinking about now, as some of this spring and early summer planted stuff will start to decline as it gets hotter. You can be prepared and know what you need to plant when those things go down. So let's jump right in, and this list is going to include a little bit of everything. Some veggies, some flowers, and even some herbs that can take the heat. So number one on our list would be sweet potatoes. So sweet potatoes absolutely love hot weather. In fact, they need hot weather. People way up north can struggle growing sweet potatoes because they don't have a long enough warm growing season. Another great thing about sweet potatoes is once they are established, there's really not a whole lot you have to do to them. That's good, because when it's blazing hot outside, we don't want to be out here doing a whole lot in the garden when it's just unbearably hot. Also, once established, they'll shade the soil a bit, which is good to help preserve a little bit of moisture on those really hot days. They'll also suppress weeds, which is good because we don't want to be out here pulling weeds when it's so hot outside. Additionally, sweet potatoes are a dual-purpose crop. Now, we're mostly going for those sweet potatoes underneath the soil there. That's what we really want, but you can also eat the leaves. So technically, you can eat the entire plant. And so pretty soon, probably early to mid-June, I'm going to be planting some sweet potatoes right here in this spot. Haven't decided yet if I'm going to plant the entire plot or just maybe 2/3 of this plot, but I'll at least put 3 rows in here. So probably next week I'll get on the phone, call my friends over at Steel Plant Company where I usually get my sweet potato plants. Go ahead and order those before they stop shipping. They usually stop shipping sometime in early June. So get those plants in, then I'll put them in a jar of water for a week or two, get them nice and vibrant looking, then we'll stick them in that plot back there. Number 2 on our heat loving list is Oakry. Now, Oakry is native to Africa. It is very heat tolerant and also very drought tolerant. Now, while Oakry is very drought tolerant, meaning the plants don't really die if they go through a long dry spell, a long dry spell can affect production and the quality of the pods. So if it gets really, really dry, you'll notice production slowing down. You won't get as many pods, and those pods won't stay tender for very long. They'll get tough if the soil is really dry. So it does help to give them some water every now and then, keep that pod production growing so that plant's just not in survival mode, and also keep your pods staying tender for longer. And I planted my Oakry in this raised bed here about a week or so ago. This is that dwarf cowhorn variety that we really like. I've got it packed in here thick because we'll prune those plants and they'll end up looking like a bunch of palm trees. If you've seen our videos in the past on this variety here, we'll actually end up getting quite a good bit of Oakry from this little 4x6 bed here. And so that Oakry in that bed will probably start producing, say 30 or 40 days from now, and it will continue producing for us all the way until our first frost in the fall or early winter. Number 3 on our list is peppers, sweet or hot peppers. Now, you will see some sources out there that say peppers start to decline or drop blooms or don't do as well in the intense summer heat. But I have found that if you feed them well, if you water them well, you can get continual production all summer long. Now, if you just put some fertilizer on the ground when you plant those peppers and you just let them go, yes, once it gets really hot, they're going to look like they're struggling a little bit. But if you continue that feeding, keep them well watered, you'd be surprised at just how long of a production window you can get. And so I've got my peppers planted in this row here, got them on drip irrigation, got cages around them to support them, so we'll be able to keep them watered, and I'm usually feeding them every 2 weeks with some AgriThrive. Now you will notice a few skips in the row here where I've had to replant or still need to replant. So yesterday, me and my wife had to have a little bit of a difficult conversation about her letting those chickens out when she gets home from work in the afternoons. I usually don't mind them being out roaming around. They usually don't bother anything, but recently they have taken a liking to scratching up my pepper plants, and I also caught them eating my tomatoes at the bottom there, pecking on those green tomatoes. So I had to put a cease and desist order on letting the chickens out in the afternoon. Moving along to number 4 on our list, and this is the only variety specific thing on our list, a variety of pumpkin that grows exceptionally well down here, the Seminole pumpkin. Now if you're not familiar with the Seminole pumpkin, it is a C. machata type pumpkin, same species as butternut squash or the Cherokee tan pumpkin. Maybe you've heard of that one. So the Seminole pumpkin is native to South Florida, and it is the only pumpkin I can grow down here when it gets really hot. All the others melt, or the plants just die back because they get disease and all kind of other issues. Now this is a eating pumpkin or a pie pumpkin. Doesn't get very large, only about this size right here, smaller than a soccer ball, but they store exceptionally well. I have had some under the barn that have stored for 2 years before, and they were still tasty after 2 years. And so I transplanted a row of these late last week. You might be thinking, just one row for this whole 30 by 35 plot? Well, you'll be surprised at how vigorous these plants are. That one row will end up covering this entire plot here. I couldn't have planted any other variety of pumpkin this late, but this Seminole pumpkin should be just fine. Now the last veggie on our list, number 5, would be cowpeas, aka field peas. Much like sweet potatoes, these are fairly drought tolerant and really don't require a ton of maintenance as they grow. And there are a bunch of really good cowpea varieties out there, a bunch of good heirloom ones, and even some modern varieties out there that perform pretty well. Now, I personally don't have any cowpeas planted at the moment. I prefer to plant in the late summer months because of a particular pest we deal with down here called the pea curculio. It seems to lessen as we get into late summer, so I prefer a fall planting of those, but they can tolerate the summer heat just fine. You could plant them right now, and if you didn't have a ton of pest pressure, get a really good harvest. Now let's talk about some flowers that can tolerate the summer heat. Always good to have some flowers in your garden to accompany those veggies, and contrary to what you may see online, not all flowers can tolerate intense summer heat. You'll see stuff online, plant this flower, is really good with your garden, but there's only a few of them that can really take a hot summer. So number 6 on our list would be sunflowers. This is probably the most obvious one. Lots of different types of sunflowers out there, lots of different colors, lots of different heights, lots of different bloom styles. Some of them just make one head, some of them are branching and make bunches of heads. So sunflowers are going to provide some nice pollinator habitat, really get those bees flocking to your garden. You could also use sunflowers to provide some shade. If you planted them, you know, in the right orientation there, maybe help provide some relief or shade to some lower level plants. You could also use them for a windbreak. So plant them really thick, make a nice wall of sunflowers, and give a little bit of relief to some plants that may be getting battered by the wind. And so I actually planted 2 rows of sunflowers yesterday in this same plot I showed you earlier where we have those Seminole pumpkin transplants. So we had these drip lines down from our English pea grow out earlier in the year, left those drip lines in place and planted sunflowers along those 2 closest to me there. Those should get up and going before those pumpkins cover this entire plot, and we'll have a nice little sunflower Seminole pumpkin interplanting going on here. Number 7 on our list, another flower that does well in the heat would be zinnias, or zinnias as some people like to call them. Now zinnias can start looking rough when it gets really hot outside. They can get mildew, they can start looking kind of pitiful, But as is the case with a lot of things, I have found if you feed them well, give them some water, and keep them pruned back, they will continue thriving all throughout the summer. So zinnias are great for butterflies. They're also great for just cutting a few flowers, putting them in a jar, taking them in the house, having a nice little table decoration. We love having zinnias all around the garden here. And I've got two beautiful beds of zinnias right here. These have already been pruned back one time, and once this bed gets covered with blooms again, we'll keep cutting them back. You want to see those leaves nice and dark green like those are. If they're not, you want to feed them, keep them watered, keep them pruned back, and they'll continue looking like this even though it's really hot outside. And the last flower on our list, number 8, would be marigolds. Now, much like the zinnias, these can start looking a little rough if you neglect them during the hottest part of summer. But if you feed them, you water them, you keep them pruned back, they'll look great all summer long. So I really like these giant marigolds. The plants aren't that giant, but the blooms are a good bit bigger than standard marigolds. So this is giant orange, and I do think I have a few giant yellows over there on that side of the bed. And so these are looking nice and healthy right now. What we'll do, we'll wait for a nice flush of blooms, enjoy that beauty for a few days, then we'll come pick off all those blooms. It will make new blooms. As long as you keep doing that, keep feeding them and water them, they will look like this all summer long. Getting towards the end here, number 9 on our list is basil, and basil is an exceptional bee attractor. Bees love basil flowers. And as is the case with the zinnias and the marigolds, if you prune, feed, and water that basil on a regular basis, it will stay looking great all summer long. So we've got a beautiful bed of basil right here, more basil than we can eat, but we're not just growing it for us. I've already cut this back one time, and we'll probably do it again soon once those flowers get a little more pronounced. I like to keep this stuff kind of small and bushy. We get more blooms that way, get nice bed coverage, shades out any weeds, and it just looks awesome. And then lastly, number 10 on our list that can take the intense summer heat, and this is kind of an honorable mention. We won't go into a lot of detail here. We're talking about warm season cover crops. So like I said, I won't go into a whole lot of detail on warm season cover crops. We could do 2 or 3 more videos on that subject alone, but cover crops are great to plant in the middle of summer when you're just tired of the garden and you need a break, but you don't want to let it get overgrown with weeds. So you plant a cover crop, feed the soil, suppress weeds. You can even use them to feed your chickens. And as we get closer to warm season cover crop planting time around here, we'll be sure to do at least one, maybe several videos on that subject. So I hope you enjoyed our list there. I certainly didn't cover every possible thing out there that could be in your garden and take the summer heat, but I think that's a pretty good basic list there. If you've got others you'd like to add to the list, let me know about those in the comments below. And if you just can't wait to hear more about warm season cover crops and what they can do for your soil and the different kinds you can plant, watch this video right here. We'll give you some good suggestions on the ones we like to grow and some others that you could try as well. So check that out, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.